So as the suspense continues amidst these mixed messages, there are protesters who are calling for the immediate ouster of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And they are protesting outside one of his private residences in the Azar Street in Jerusalem. Now, these are the latest images of the protests that are unfolding right from in front of the house of Netanyahu, where people are saying that Netanyahu has not done enough in getting the hostages back home immediately. They're also saying that Mr. Security has actually become a security disaster for the state of Israel. We're also being joined by Mr. Elijah Magnier, who's a veteran war correspondent and an analyst, is joining us live from Brussels on this broadcast. Now, Mr. Magnier, we've just been getting details in terms of what is happening in day two of this exchange of, prisoners for hostages. I want you to weigh in on this first, where there are some delays. The Palestinian Hamas faction says that Israel must allow aid into northern Gaza, which it has not done, which was agreed as part of the deal, before the second batch of hostages can actually be released. What do you make of this development?
Thank you for having me. Well, actually, less than half an hour ago, I spoke to people who are involved in the negotiation, and they've told me that there are several points that the Palestinians are raising with the Qatari negotiators so they can be raised with the Israelis. First of all, the Israelis are violating the ceasefire agreement by killing 2 Palestinians and continuing flying above the south of Gaza by sending drones, which is a violation of the agreement. Secondly, they were agreed that there are 100 trucks per day that you should cross from the south to the north, and so far there are only 10 to 12 trucks that were allowed to cross, and this is not acceptable by the terms of the agreement. The third point is all the Palestinians that figure on the list of people and prisoners who should be released under the age of 18 were not released and were changed into other names and releasing other prisoners. And the negotiators think, because Israel doesn't want to give the impression that there are still Palestinian prisoners in jail under the age of 18. The other point is there are prisoners with long sentences that are supposed to be freed in day one. And again, they were changed with other names, and the Israelis did not abide by the list offered by Hamas from day one. So all these points represent a violation of the ceasefire agreement. Doesn't mean it's going to stop, but it has been delayed to make sure that the process is going to continue. Right. And the delay is to make sure that both sides will respect the end of the deal.
Absolutely. And my second question to you, Mr. Magnier, is with relation to the protests that are happening at this moment as we speak in front of Netanyahu's residence. There have been protests that have been held right from the beginning of this war and even before that against Netanyahu. But now people are saying that Netanyahu has not shown the initiative that is needed to bring the Israeli hostages back home. Many of the critics of Netanyahu have even said that he had originally rejected a deal to bring back the hostages and later crumbled under pressure. What do you think is making Netanyahu not to show the initiative that is needed to get the Israelis back home?
This is an excellent question. In fact, there is a doctrine in the Israeli army called the Hannibal. And the Hannibal doctrine is it's better to have Israeli prisoners or hostages killed rather than have them alive. So throughout the 50 days, the only reason why the Israeli army and the Israeli government accepted to negotiate is because of the domestic pressure that the families of those who are taking hostage and prisoners want them back. And the bombardment, according to the Palestinian organization, Hamas and the Islamic Jihad, there are many Israelis, around 50, that have lost their life because of the bombardment. So the Israelis are not asking to stop the war. They're talking about a pause, only to release all the hostages and prisoners, and then the Israeli army can do whatever it wants. However, this is posing a real problem to the Israeli government because first, they're not fulfilling their first objective to destroy Hamas. Second, to liberate all the hostages by the means of force. By pausing, it is putting a pressure on the army that is scattered in the north of Gaza and needs to be redeployed. And then the 4 to 8 days, because we expect another 8 days to be added to the initial 4, that will create more pressure from the international community to stop the war. And this fits with the request of the domestic Israeli population that is asking the government to stop until everybody has been released, including the army members and the generals. There are 4 generals that are taken by Hamas.
You know, Mr. Magni, as you pointed out, that there is pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu by the family members of the hostages who are at this moment in the custody of Hamas. But there's also this another stream of thought within Israeli politics. You know, members such as Itamar Ben-Gvir, who are members of Netanyahu's cabinet, who say that this hostage deal should have never been struck. He's described it as a disaster and amoral. How far do you think Netanyahu will be able to balance these two very different sentiments? One which says negotiate with Hamas, and another that says that there should be no negotiations with Hamas.
Well, you're touching upon a very sensitive point in the Israeli domestic affairs and international affairs, because the government of Benjamin Netanyahu has been under harsh criticism from the United States, from Europe, and from all over the world because of the member of the government he has. And Itamar Ben-Gvir, the national security minister, and Smotrich, the finance minister, are both very radical, and they just don't want to negotiate, and they want the war to continue. And at the first beginning, they said, well, even if our hostages are killed, it doesn't matter. So all this dispute inside the government, it is essential for Benjamin Netanyahu to keep his government together. Right. However, if he drops Itamar Ben-Gvir, he will fall, and my guess is they both are going to fall at the end of this war.
I think that's, of course, the crux of this issue within the Israeli politics. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for joining us and getting us that perspective there.
My pleasure.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.